सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्. So, in the morning class, we were just explaining the criteria for perception, knowledge to become perceptual. So, we were explaining manojanyatna hi indriyajanyatvena jnanasya sakshatvam. It is not the case that knowledge will become perceptual only when it arises from a sense organ. That was the thesis of the Nayayika. Knowledge is perceptual only when it arises from sense organs. So for this, we have shown two instances of lack of correspondence, that anumityaderapi manojanyataya, even inferential cognitions which arise from the mind have to be treated as sakshatva apattehe, because anumiti or inferential cognition is only mediate knowledge, it is not immediate. So if we subscribe to the view that knowledge which arises from sense organs, that alone is perceptual, then we have to admit that inferential cognition which arises from mind, which is a sense organ, also has to be treated as perceptual in nature, which however is not the case. And not only that, Ishvara jnanasya anindriyajanyataya sakshatva anapattehe, since the knowledge of Ishvara does not arise from any sense organ, his knowledge cannot be viewed as perceptual in nature, which however is not the case. So for these two reasons, because of the lack of correspondence in these two instances, the Advaitins are forced to give up this rule that nahi indriyajanyatvena jnanasya sakshatvam. It is not the case that knowledge becomes perceptual only if it arises from a sense organ. This rule has to be given up. Now the question remains as to what exactly is the criterion for the perceptuality of knowledge. So the Nayayika is forced to put the question, Siddhante kim Siddhante Pratyakshatva prayojakam kimiti chet. What then is the criterion for perceptuality in Advaita Siddhanta? So the Advaitin asks the question, do you ask about the criterion for perceptuality of knowledge or criterion for perceptuality of object? No, perceptuality . So, ignorantly the opponent puts a question, what then is the criterion for perceptuality? This is the question. Now the Advaitins ask, do you ask about perceptuality of knowledge or perceptuality of object? Then only the opponent comes to know that there is a twofold distinction of perceptuality of object and perceptuality of knowledge. So Siddhante Pratyakshatva prayojakam kimiti chet, kim jnanagatasya pratyakshattvasya prayojakam pritchasi, kim va vishayagatasya. Are you asking about perceptuality of knowledge or perceptuality of object? Okay, so now what is the difference between these two? We have to read in detail. Now, if you have to understand it in a general way, when you have the knowledge of pot, any object, any knowledge must refer to a content, isn't it? That is what we have been telling. If I speak of knowledge, then knowledge must refer to a content, a vishaya. So, you perceive the object and you have the knowledge of the object. And you must also have the knowledge that you have the knowledge of something. So, knowledge becoming perceptual and the object becoming perceptual, there is a difference between the two. Now, when will knowledge become perceptual and when does the object become perceptual? Before going into the details, you must first of all know the basic position of Advaita, what constitutes objectivity or Vishayata in Advaita. What constitutes objectivity? This is an object. This is an object. This is an object. So you are able to perceive all these objects. You are able to have the cognition of all these objects. So what exactly is meant by objectivity? The Advaitins say chit tadatmyam vishayata. Means any object which is identified with the pure consciousness constitutes an object. For example, this object is this is what we have been telling from the beginning. It is superimposed upon the consciousness conditioned by it. So chit means chaitanya, tadatmya means identity. So any object which is identical with its substratal principle or adhisthana or the substratal principle, then that is Vishaya or object comes to be acquired with objectivity once it gets identified with the substratal principle. So you are referring to this as an object. Why? How are you able to call this as an object? Because it is identified or it is superimposed upon the consciousness conditioned by it. So such an object is present elsewhere and you have the knowledge of such an object, or it becomes the content of your knowledge. Now, how do you have the knowledge of such an object, and what is the form of that knowledge? When does knowledge become perceptual? So in order to understand this, you have to first basically understand the threefold distinction of consciousness. Consciousness, although it is one only according to Advaita, yet for the sake of understanding epistemology, we make a threefold distinction of consciousness as Pramana Chaitanya, Pramatra Chaitanya, and Vishaya Chaitanya. Chaitanya or pure consciousness is one only, but yet because of the limiting adjuncts or as its association with several upadhis or limiting adjuncts or the places it occupies, it gets three different names as Pramana Chaitanya, Pramatra Chaitanya and Vishaya Chaitanya. Now what is Pramana Chaitanya? Pramana Chaitanya is the consciousness conditioned by the mental state. Or mental modification. That is, in Sanskrit you call it as Antakarana Vrityavachinnam Chaitanyam. The Chaitanya or the consciousness conditioned by the mental modification is technically called Pramana Chaitanya. And what is Pramatra Chaitanya? Professor R.B. was mentioning Pramata means knower, Kartrutva, Bhoktritva and Pramatritva. All these pertain to the mind, and in association with such a mind, the self becomes the Pramata or the knower. Actually, knowership, knowledge is not possessed by the self, but in association, Kartrutva, Bhoktritva, Pramatritva, all these are the attributes of the mind, which in association with such a mind, the self is referred to as Pramata or knower. So, this Pramata or knower is the individual soul or Jiva. He is the Pramata. So, how do you define this Pramatra Chaitanya? It is the consciousness conditioned by mind. Remember, there is a lot of difference between the Pramatru Chaitanya and Pramana Chaitanya. Consciousness conditioned with the mind is Pramata, whereas the mind, when it undergoes modification and the consciousness conditioned by such a modification, is termed Pramana Chaitanya. And Vishaya Chaitanya is object conditioned consciousness, like part conditioned consciousness, etc. etc. Any consciousness which is conditioned by the object, that is called Vishaya Chaitanya. The mind undergoes modification in the form of objects. So there is Chaitanya. Chaitanya is all pervasive. So it is being conditioned by the mental state. Then in such a place, it acquires the name Pramana Chaitanya, because there is also a reason for it. We have been explaining the role of vritti. What does that vritti or the mental state do? It removes the ignorance, isn't it? So, what is meant by a pramana? Pramana is nothing but ajnata jnapakam pramanam, that which makes you know something which is not known to you earlier. What is meant by pramana? Pramana is that which is helpful to you to make you know something. So, this antakarana vritti performs the role of removing the ignorance, and thereby it makes the consciousness fit enough to get reflected in the mental state. So the mental state is in a way, not in a way, it is the actually removing factor, or the factor which removes ignorance. So, and makes you know something. So that is why it is given the name pramana. It actually plays the role of the means to the cognition. So that which gives pramakaranam pramanam. So that which gives or paves you the way to understand something, that is pramana. So antakarana vritti does that. It performs that role of removing the ignorance. So it is called Pramana Chaitanya. Pramatru Chaitanya is nothing but the individual soul or the consciousness conditioned by the mind. He is the Pramata. And incidentally, he is also the knower, he is also the agent, and also is the experient of the results of the action. So Karta, Bhokta, Pramata, all these refer to the individual soul. But strictly speaking, this Kartritva, Bhoktritva and Pramatritva, they do not belong to the self. In the self, in association with the mind, it comes to be acquired of these characteristics. So it is the blend of the mind and the self, which is referred to by the term I, and which is also known as Karta, Bhokta and Pramata. So the consciousness conditioned by the mind is termed Pramata, the individual soul or Jiva, and Vishaya Chaitanya is object conditioned consciousness. Now, it is against this background that we have to understand the criterion for perceptuality of knowledge, because you should never forget this threefold classification of Pramana Chaitanya, Pramatra Chaitanya and Vishaya Chaitanya. Now, first he says, when does knowledge become perceptual? Knowledge is perceptual adye, because jnanagata pratyakshatvasya prayojakam pritchasi kim va vishayagatasya. That is the question posed. First one is jnanagata pratyaksha. When do you have the knowledge of pot as this is pot? When does the knowledge this is pot, when does it become perceptual? He says, when there is abheda or identity of pramana chaitanya and the vishaya chaitanya. Let me give then the symbol A, this is B and this is C. Okay, when A becomes identical with B, then knowledge is perceptual. So knowledge becomes perceptual when A is identical with B. A becomes identical with B. And when does the Vishaya or object become perceptual? This is object, okay. When C So this is broadly, you have to understand it this way. When A is identical, Pramana Chaitanya, when it gets identified with the Vishaya Chaitanya, then knowledge becomes perceptual. And when B becomes identical with C, that is Pramatra Chaitanya. What is that identity? We are going to explain later on. So when B is identical with C, then object becomes perceptual. This is the skeleton in which we have to work. Now, as we have explained earlier, first we are going to deal with Jnanagata Pratyaksha, that is, you are perceiving pot and you have the knowledge this is pot. Now, what is the process? We have been explaining this. When now only in the text he is explaining what is meant by vritti. Tatra yata tadagodakam chidran nirgatya. This I have not explained you so far. Tatra yata tadagodakam chidran nirgatya kulyatmana kedaran pravishya tadvadeva chatushkonad vyakaram bhavati. Means, just as the water of a lake or pond, tatra yata tadagodakam, the water of a pond, chidran nirgatya, it comes out through a hole, small hole. Chidran nirgatya. Kulyatmana kedaran pravishya, it passes through the channels and reaches the fields. Kulyatmana kedaran, kedara means sasya nishpatti sthanam, that is the paddy fields. Kedaran pravishya, and it assumes modification in the form of quadrad or pentad, hectagon, whatever be the form of the field that water occupies that particular field. So kulyatmana kedaran pravishya tadvadeva chatushkonadhyakaram bhavati. It assumes, or it fills up that place, that water gets filled up. Chatushkonadhyakaram bhavati. This is the analogy part. What is the analog? Tata, in the same way, taijasam antakaranam. Taijasam antakaranam means mind also comes out through the sense organ. How can mind travel? One may have the doubt, how can mind travel? That is why he says, Tata taijasam antakaranam api. Taijasam antakaranam means because mind is luminous by nature, it is capable of traveling. Tata taijasam antakaranam api. Chakshuradi dwara bahihi nirgatya. It comes out through the various, in accordance with the object it has to perceive, it comes out through the various sense organs. Chakshuradi dwara bahihi nirgatya. Gatadi Vishaya Desham Gatva. It reaches the place where the object is located and assumes modification in the form of that object. And this is what is known as technically vritti. He gives a technical name for this vritti because the Sanskrit word vritti has got different connotations. It is used in different connotations in different Indian philosophical schools. So this is a technical term. Vritti. Vritti means, an ordinary dictionary meaning for vritti is presence. Vritti means presence. Tatra vrittihi means that which is present there. So it is very difficult if you just have aptest dictionary by your side and just start translating an Advaita work. You will be at a loss to know what it is. So any particular Indian philosophical school, if it has to be translated, one has to know the terminologies used in that particular system. So here at least the word vritti is used in a technical sense, that it refers to the mental modification or the transformation of mind. Okay, so it takes place, that mental modification. And what does that mental modification do? We have explained that it removes. So now mind has reached the place of the pot, and this is mind. It has come and it has assumed this is mental modification. Let us consider this is the mental modification or the vritti. Now there is the underlying consciousness. That consciousness is concealed by Tula Vidya. Now this vritti removes the Tula Vidya, concealing the consciousness. Then the consciousness gets reflected in the mental state. This is what we have been explaining. Now what happens? Vishaya Chaitanya is located in the place where the Vishaya is present. The Pramata is inside your body. there is a lot of difference. The object is present elsewhere and I am here. Now if I have to have the cognition of the object, I have to reach the place where the object is. I have to go there and comprehend it. My sense organ should reach the place of the object and comprehend it. So this is the process we have explained, that the mind goes out through that particular sense organ in order to comprehend the object. So that is what we have been explaining so far. So now, if I don't have any contact with the object, I cannot claim to have any knowledge of the object. So in order to have the knowledge of the object, my mind should reach the place where the object is present. So my mind has reached the place and it has assumed modification. Now Chaitanya is all pervasive, consciousness is all pervasive, but yet we refer to the consciousness as being conditioned by the object, and we call it or give it the name consciousness conditioned by the object. We make a distinction in the all pervasive consciousness. In order to understand, we make a distinction that this is object conditioned consciousness and this is a consciousness conditioned by my individual, that is by my mind. So, and it is located inside the body. So although consciousness is present everywhere, yet we make a distinction in the consciousness. Now if my mind has gone there, that means my mind has assumed modification. So the consciousness which is present there, it gets conditioned not only by the Vishaya, it gets conditioned by the mental state also. So long the mind has not reached the place of the object, I don't claim to have the knowledge of the object. But once the mind has gone there, that means it has taken the modification in the form of the object. That means the Vishaya Chaitanya, the object conditioned consciousness, has now come to be identified with the consciousness conditioned by the mental state also. In other words, in this place itself, there is the consciousness conditioned by mind, because vritti is there. This is the object conditioned consciousness. And in the very same place, what is present? Object, the consciousness conditioned by vritti or mental modification. So since the mind has reached the place of pot, here already the pot is superimposed upon consciousness, which is called object conditioned consciousness. Now that the mind has also come to the place and assumed modification, this consciousness is also referred to as consciousness conditioned by the mental state. Now these two have, now please bear in mind, for one and the same consciousness, there are two upadhis or limiting adjunct. One is the mental state and the other is the object. Is it clear? Now, if two limiting adjuncts come to be located in one and the same place, what is conditioned by the two limiting adjuncts? Should it not be identical or different? Should it be identical or different? Consciousness is conditioned by mental state. Consciousness is conditioned by the object. Now that the mental state or the mind has reached the place where the object is present and has assumed modification, which is called mental state, these two limiting adjuncts of the consciousness, since they are present in one and the same place, is not the consciousness limited by these two, one and the same? So to that effect, the Advaitins give a maxim. These two are referred to as upadhi. Upadhi means limiting adjunct. If upadhyoho ekadeshastatvam, upadhi, if the upadhis are located in one and the same place, then what is being conditioned by these two upadhis also has to be identical, because upadhyoho ekadeshastatvam upadeya abheda prayojakam. This will bring in the identity of the consciousness. Left to itself, object conditioned consciousness was different from the object consciousness conditioned by the mind, because I am somewhere, object is elsewhere. But there is a relation established between the two, because I have connection with the object. Now my mind has reached the place, I don't look at any other object, I'm constantly looking at that object. My mind is fully conscious of that object. So there is a relation between these two. So now the consciousness conditioned by the mental state and consciousness conditioned by the object, they have become identical. And what does this mental state do? We have been explaining the same old process, that it removes the object, Tula Vidya, concealing the object conditioned consciousness. So the object is manifested, or the object conditioned consciousness is reflected, or it is reflected in the mental state in the form of that object. So then you have the knowledge, what is called Gatakara Antakarana Vritti Pratipalita Chaitanya, that is termed the empirical cognition of pot, and it is called this is pot. So when there is the identity of the consciousness conditioned by the mental state and that of the object, then knowledge becomes perceptual, and you have the knowledge, this is pot. Now closely related with this is the perceptuality of objects. Object means, unless and otherwise you know what it is, what the object is, you cannot give expression to your knowledge as this is pot. First of all, you must know what a pot is. You must understand, or you must comprehend the object pot. Then only you can give expression to it as this is pot. Now, when does this pot become perceptual? The object becomes perceptual. We have already said chit tadatmyam visheta. Now, if my mind has gone to the place where the object is located, that means the pramata or the individual soul also has reached the place where the object is present. Means to comprehend the object. That means it has gone out, means one person is not dead. It has reached the place to comprehend the object. So now in the perceptual, the process of perceptual cognition, all the three consciousness, Pramana Chaitanya, Pramatra Chaitanya, and Vishaya Chaitanya is located elsewhere. But in order to get identified with Vishaya Chaitanya, this Pramatra Chaitanya goes to the place where the Vishaya Chaitanya is present. So now what happens is, in the case of the perceptual knowledge of object, he says, when you are not looking at the object, pot by itself, it is superimposed upon the consciousness conditioned by it. Now, all objects derive sustenance and manifestation from the underlying reality. So, pot does not have any independent existence. It is capable of being manifested. We are able to Ananda Sarupam Brahma, that is the Adhisthana. That is why you are able to say that pot exists, pot manifests, pot is, I like pot. So, all these usages, or we are able to have, because it derives, which it derives from the underlying reality. Now what happens is, in the case of the perceptuality of object, he says B should become identical with C. In Sanskrit you call as pramatra bedaha. There is identity of the pramata with that of the vishaya. Now what does it mean, pramatra beda? There arises a question. If you say that the pramata has become identical with the object, then how are we to account for the usages? I know pot. In this cognition, there is a clear case of difference. I know pot. There is a difference between I and pot. Now this pot refers to the object. I refers to the pramata. Isn't it? Now, in order to have the perceptuality of object, you say that the pramata should become identical with the object. Then how are we to account for the usage I know pot? I know pot means where a clear distinction between the I element and pot element is noticed. So the Advaitins try to explain this. Please don't think that by the word, by the expression pramatra beda, It does not mean identity. It does not mean aikya. It does not pramatra bedo nama natavad aikyam. It does not mean aikya or identity. Identity means, he is explaining, pramatra satta atrikta satta kattva shunyatvam. This is a very, very important point you have to understand. Now, prior to the object becoming perceptual, any object for that matter, the object will not have any independent existence apart from the underlying reality. This is the basic position. Now, what happens when you are having the knowledge of pot? The Pramatra Chaitanya has reached the place where the pot is present. Now, it has become, and it is one with the object conditioned consciousness. You have reached where pot is located, whatever be the object. Now, this Pramatra Chaitanya becoming identical with Vishaya Chaitanya means, what does it mean? The object which was deriving sustenance and manifestation from the object conditioned consciousness will not anymore derive its sustenance from the object conditioned consciousness. On the other hand, it will derive its sustenance and manifestation from the Pramatra Chaitanya, because C has become identical with B now. There is fusion rather. There is no question of C and B there. There is no distinction at all. Now C has totally merged with B, and B loses its state of being B at all. That is what is meant by object conditioned consciousness loses its state of being object conditioned consciousness. In other words, the object is now superimposed upon the Pramatra Chaitanya. That is what, so long there is the contact with the object, this happens. Once you cease to have relation with the object, again that object condition conscious, that is B will acquire its same old position, and C will come back to the normal position. So abheda here means Pramatra, whatever be the satta or the existence for the Pramata, that will be the satta for the object also. That is, to be very precise, the object which did not have any independent existence apart from B will now come to possess C as its Adhisthana Chaitanya. Is it clear? That Pramata has become identical with B means, C has become identical with B means, there is no longer the distinction between C and B when there is the perceptuality of object. B ceases to be B and gets absorbed in C. That is what is meant by Pramatra Bheda. That means the object which was deriving its existence and manifestation from B will no longer derive it from that. On the other hand, it is now superimposed upon C. That means it has become identical with C. B has become identical with C. Now, this Jnanagata Pratyaksha and Vishayagata Pratyaksha is simultaneous in the case of Aparoksha Jnana. Whenever you have Jnanagata Pratyaksha, whenever you have knowledge, whenever knowledge becomes perceptual, that means it is implied that object also is perceptual. Without the object becoming perceptual, how can you have knowledge perceptual? Isn't it? So, in all cases of immediate perceptual knowledge, both Vishaya and Jnana will become perceptual. But contrary to this, in the case of inferential cognitions, what happens is, object does not become perceptual because you do not have direct contact with fire. On the other hand, you have the knowledge of fire being present in the mountain. Is it clear? There is a lot of distinction between Aparoksha Jnana and Paroksha Jnana. In the case of Paroksha Jnana, knowledge alone will become perceptual and not the object. In the case of Aparoksha Jnana, both knowledge as well as object will become perceptual. As a necessary corollary, if knowledge becomes perceptual, then object should have been perceptual. But such is not the case with inferential cognition, because in the case of inferential cognition, your mind does not reach the place where fire is present. On the other hand, everything happens internally. You see smoke in the mountain, and there is the knowledge of invariable relation. Everything is working out here, and you have the knowledge of the presence of fire in the mountain. You infer the existence of fire, and yet you have the knowledge of fire in the mountain, and you give expression to it as Parvato Vanniman Dhumad. So, there, knowledge is perceptual, but object is not perceptual. Is it clear? So, you have to understand that in all cases of aparoksha jnana or immediate knowledge, both knowledge and object are perceptual. Whereas in the case of immediate knowledge of fire in the mountain, it is knowledge alone that becomes perceptual. Pramana chaitanyasya vishayavachinna chaitanya abhedaha, pramatra chaitanya vishaya chaitanya abheda can never take place. If it takes place, then it ceases to be inferential cognition. If, however, if somebody is able to see, I am able to see fire in the mountain, then do away with inferential cognition. It is no more an inferential cognition. Is it clear? No. Yeah. I just wanted to make a contrast between these two. I have not gone into the details of. See, I just wanted to give in the periphery. First of all, if I go into the details of Jnanagata Pratyaksha, there are some more points, because the final amended definition, Pramana Chaitanya Vishayavachina Chaitanya Abhedaha, in contrast to that, Pramatra Abhedaha Vishaya Chaitanya. And what happens in the case of, this is the first outline I am just giving. Now we have to go into the details. We do not rest with this Pramana Chaitanya Vishaya Chaitanya Abheda. That is not the only criterion. We have got something more to add. He goes on amending it. Now, is there any questions or clarifications needed, or should I repeat or anything? Oh. No, not necessarily. Even if you have any doubts, you can ask me later on. So far so good. So I can then proceed now with the Jnanagata Pratyaksha. Some more details are there. How long do we have the class? Till 3:30, isn't it? Okay. So we have got 10 more minutes. Now, there arises an objection. In the case of, now we will constrain ourselves to Jnanagata Pratyaksha. Knowledge is perceptual when A is identical with B, that is Pramana Chaitanya and Vishaya Chaitanya are identical. This is what we said. Now one poses a question. There is the perceptual cognition of the attributes of the mind as well as attributes of the mind, aham sukhi, aham dukkhi, all these. What happens there is, mind itself undergoes modification in the form of sukha. So sukha kara antakarana vritti, and the object also, sukha itself serves as the object. So internally everything takes place, and you have the cognition, I am happy. That is no problem in explaining that. But there arises a problem. Oh, I have to write inside. Sukha smriti. There is a recollection of sukha, recollection of happiness. Swavritti sukadi smarana dashayam. I had gone to Japan and I just recollect whatever I experienced at Japan, and I am now happy. Now it is only recollection of smriti. When I am really happy, there is no difficulty in explaining how I have the cognition aham sukhi. That is not difficult, because my mind undergoes modification in the form of sukha now, and Pramana Chaitanya, Vishaya Chaitanya, Abheda is there. I give expression to my happiness. I feel I am happy. All these things take place. But the question arises, where when I recollect happiness, which I have experienced earlier, the opponent raises an objection. Swavritti Sukadi Smarana Dashayam. When one recollects happiness, then also that Pramana Chaitanya and Vishay Chaitanya, are they not one and the same? And should one not have the cognition, I am happy now? I am recollecting happiness, but the problem that is posed is that I should have the cognition, I am happy now. But it is only recollection of happiness. Because strictly speaking, Swavritti Sukadi Smarana means Smriti is a kind of knowledge, isn't it? Recollection, there are two kinds of cognitions. One is experience and another is Smriti. Now, mind, knowledge is a modification of mind, and Smriti is a kind of knowledge. So, if there is recollection of happiness, that means mind has undergone modification in the form of recollection of happiness. Recollection. So, presently, when I am recollecting my trip to Japan, my mind has undergone modification in the form of recollection of happiness. Is it clear? So, now presently, there is the mental modification in the form of recollection. And in that recollection, what is the content of that recollection? Happiness. So, the opponent raises an objection. Let there be, when there is the recollection of happiness also, since the mind has undergone modification in the form of recollection of happiness, let there be the perceptual experience of happiness even now, which one cannot admit at all. So the Advaitins say the object of recollection, namely happiness, does not pertain to the present time. It relates to the past. Okay, to that effect, have you said anything in the definition? The definition says only this much. When the Pramana Chaitanya becomes identical with the Vishaya Chaitanya. Now the Vishaya Chaitanya is, Sukha is the Vishaya, and Sukakara Antakarana Vritti. Sukakara Antakarana Vritti means Smriti Rupa Sukakara Antakarana Vritti is there. Because they are located in one and the same place, why should there not be the experience of happiness when it is being recollected also? So the Advaitins say, no, the definition should be amended like this. Means, Pramana Chaitanyasya Vartamana Vishayavachinna Chaitanya Abhedaha. We add the word Vartamana, means that which is present. The Vishaya Chaitanya, the Vishaya or the object, should be prefixed with the adjective that it must be present at the time when it is being experienced. Now, in the case of the recollection of Smriti, although the Smriti Rupa Antakarana relates to Smriti Rupa Antakarana is present now, yet the object of Smriti, namely the Sukha or happiness, relates to the past time. It is not present now. So, Vartamana Vishayavachinna Chaitanya means the object should be related to the present time or at the time when it is to be perceived. In the present case, although happiness is recollected, that happiness which is recollected does not relate to the present time. There is a lot of difference between happiness being experienced at the present moment and being recollected from the past experience. So, now the amended definition goes on like this. Pramana Chaitanyasya Vishayavachinna Chaitanya Abhedaha. We do not rest with that. We say Pramana Chaitanyasya Vartamana Vishayavachinna Chaitanya. That is, the Vishaya should be present at the time. It should be present at the time when it is perceived or experienced. So, Pramana Chaitanyasya Vartamana Vishayavachinna Chaitanya Abhedaha. This is Jnanagata Pratyakshatve Prayojakam. Now, immediately another question is posed. Okay, there is the inference of, see, I have the cognition, aham dharmikaha sukitvat. I am a virtuous person because I am living very happily. I must have done some good, I must have acquired some merits in my previous birth. So, because I am living very happily, so I infer the existence of dharma in me. Now, this dharma, now when I am inferring, this is only a case of inference. But the Purva Pakshin, the opponent raises an objection. Because I am able to have such a cognition, can we say that dharma, adharma, all these can become perceptual? Because I am able to say that I am happy, I am a virtuous person. I am able to express that I am a virtuous person. But the Advaita, it is only a case of inferential cognition. So the Advaitists say it is not enough if the object is present, because at the present moment I have the cognition that I am a virtuous person. So it is Vartamana Vishaya, the object is present. No, he says, no, it is not the case. In the case of Dharma, Adharma, one cannot admit them to come within the range of perception, because Dharma and Adharma are suprasensuous. They can only be inferred, they can never be perceptualized, they can never come within the range of perception. This is the answer given by the Advaitin. So the Nayayikas now enter into the scene and they ask the question, you have referred to many attributes of the mind, kama, sankalpa, vichikitsa, shraddha, dhritihi, adhriti. So many attributes are there. And dharma and adharma also are attributes of the mind. But what is so sacred about sukha, dukkha, etc.? They are also attributes of the mind, but they come within the range of cognition. But dharma and adharma also are attributes of the mind. They do not come within the range of cognition. So why do you make such a distinction between dharma and adharma on the one hand and sukha, dukkha, etc. on the other? Some attributes of the mind come within the range of cognition and some do not come within the range of cognition. When I put you the question, why not dharma become perceptual? You say, no, dharma and adharma, they do not have the fitness or the capacity to come within the range of cognition. They can only be inferred, you say. Why do you make such a distinction? The Nayayikas put such a question. So the Advaitins retort by saying, Sir, Mr. Nayayika, if the same question is put to you also, you will also take the same answer, because all these are attributes of the self according to you. Even in self, you do not have the cognition, aham dharmikaha, like aham sukhi, aham dukhi. You do not have the cognition, aham dharmikaha. In your case also, in your system also, dharma and dharma, they do not come within the range of perception. They are only inferable, you also say. Now, what is the niyam, or what is the maxim behind admitting so? Antakarana dharmatva avisheshipi. All A, Z, everything is the attribute of mind. But only K, L, M, these three cannot be perceptually known. Why do you distinguish these three from the rest? For that, the Advaitins say, Antakarana dharmatva avisheshipi. Although there is no distinction of all of them being the attribute of mind, yet kinchid yogam, certain attributes come within the range of cognition. Kinchid ayogam, certain others do not come within the range of cognition. To say so, यदा किंचित योग्यम इत्यत्र यथा स्वभाव विशेषादिकम एव नियमः स्वभाव विशेष फल बल कृप्यः स्वभाव विशेषादिकम एव नियमः means on the strength of the ensuing result, means I have the cognition, I am happy, I have misery, I have fear. So because I am having such a cognition, I conclude that happiness could come within the range of perception. Because I do not have such a cognition, I am virtuous, I have done some demerits. All these conditions I do not have, because when I am saying I am virtuous, immediately you need a ground to say that you are virtuous. It cannot become perceptual. So on the strength of the pala bala kalpya vishesham, so you resort to this maxim that it is the nature of dharma and adharma not to come in the range of perception, and it is the nature of sukha, dukkha, etc. to come in the range of perception. That is why I have the cognition aham sukhi, aham dukhi, etc. I am not able to have the cognition aham dharmikaha. So we have no other option except resorting to the nature of the object as such, that such and such an object would come within the range of cognition and such others do not come within the range of cognition. So dharma, adharma fall under a group where they cannot come within the range of cognition, whereas sukha, dukkha, etc. we do have the cognition aham sukhi, aham dukhi. So they have got the fitness or the capacity to come within the range of cognition. So now one more clause has been added to the perceptuality criterion, is Pramana Chaitanyasya Vartamana Vishaya we have said. Now that Vishaya should also be Yogya Vishaya. Yogya Vishaya means Pratyaksha Yogyata should be there in that. So Yogya Vartamana Vishaya Vachinna Chaitanya Vedaha Jnanagata Pratyaksha Prayojakam. So to ward off over applicability of the definition in Smriti, we have included the phrase Vartamana. To ward off the over applicability of the definition in the case of Dharma Adharma, we have included one more phrase Yogya. So the definition now runs as primarily we began saying Pramana Chaitanyasya Vishaya Chaitanya Abhedaha. The identity of Pramana Chaitanya with that of the Vishaya Chaitanya, object conditioned consciousness, constitutes perceptuality of knowledge. Now we have added two more phrases, Vartamana Vishayavachinna Chaitanya and Yogya Vartamana Vishayavachinna Chaitanya Abhedaha. This constitutes criterion for the perceptuality of knowledge. So with that, I think I can close the session.